Okay, we are with Saher Sidhom, and we are sitting in AMV BBDO London. Saher, can you tell me a little bit about, we've now spent some time together, can you tell me about where I'm finding you in your work life and what it is that you're doing?
Well, in a good place is the short answer. I think why is it good? It's because we're about to launch Forge, which is a new division within AMV that's focused on developing new technologies for our clients and for ourselves. I think the good thing about that is that we're experimenting with new ways of doing business in general. So we're looking at how can we collaborate better with our clients. Simply because when you think about the type of things that we need to be doing now and in the future, we need to look at slightly different business models. So if you look at how the world of technology works and the kind of deals that you can make, the kind of businesses that you can create, the kind of service design things that you can build, they don't necessarily work in the same way and get charged for the same way that you would if you're following a basic production model, which is time and materials. So it's a good place for a number of things. I think because culturally AMV is fantastic. There is no question that you can do a lot more when you are working in a positive culture than a not so positive culture. I think this particular company is infamous for that, at least in the UK. People here are very nice, they're very collaborative, they help each other, they're very supportive. It sounds like a nirvana in many ways, which is quite hard to do if you're a big organization of this size. And I think that kind of comes down to a very strong management team and leadership team that help and support each other, which kind of, they really like each other, and they really like to help and support each other in a very positive sort of way, which trickles down the entire organization, so that becomes the status quo. So culturally it's fantastic, so it's fertile ground, so people like myself and some of the other guys over here who are also leading various innovation initiatives, it's very easy for us to work here and try and do interesting things, because to borrow one of your analogies, which is gardening, you know, it's a good soil to plant a few seeds, if you like. But also I think the strategic vision, which is the important piece that comes as well as the culture, kind of is very well set and is very well thought through. So Ian, our CEO, and Colin, the finance chief operating officer, in fact, both of them have a very clear view of how our business needs to evolve from a financial perspective and from a strategic perspective. They have very clear idea what are the strategic bets that the company needs to make in order to grow, and I'm just one of those people that have been brought in to help out in a particular area in order to make these strategic bets work. So it's a good place because culturally it's great. It's great to work here. People are nice, people support each other, and it's also a good place because there is a vision for how things are gonna evolve, and you know, different people and different initiatives kind of work towards that vision. And also because, from me personally, I think what's interesting is that the scale of the opportunity is actually quite large in a way. Of course you can do a small cool thing in a small cool place over there, which is wonderful and exciting, and I've done that and I've been there. But I think what's fascinating is that if you can do it on a large scale, on large clients that genuinely are desperate and genuinely need innovation, or at least new technology in a way that really helps their businesses. So for me, it's a much bigger play, if you like, as opposed to trying to do something cool and small. And there's a world that totally deserves that, but I think, you know, the scale story is interesting. Is how do you do it? It's easy actually to do it for the small cool hot shop, but it's a lot harder to do it for a bigger client and a bigger perspective and a bigger market and complexities. And I think that's a different type of challenge that I'm kind of excited by.
And you talk about Forge being the future factory. Can you talk to me a little bit about the principles behind this group?
Yes, of course. So the future factory, I think future because Forge has total focus on new disruptive technologies. So I have a number of things that help me look at a number of things and networks and tools, if you like, that help me look at upcoming new and disruptive technologies that will genuinely change and affect the businesses of either our clients or our client categories, or they will affect user behavior and emerging behaviors. Usually within a time span of 6 months to 18 months. So I'm not talking about sci-fi stuff that's going to happen 10 years from now. I'm talking about stuff that's potentially going to have almost an immediate impact, if not. So the focus on the future is kind of like almost a short horizon, short future horizon. I can't remember who said it, but I think somebody said, it might have been Bill Gates, I might be wrong, but he said something about you can predict next year and maybe 3 years ahead, but anything beyond that is, science fiction, which I agree with. So total focus on future, total focus on new technologies that will disrupt our client categories or specific client brands, and we need to be able to pick these things up quite quickly before they happen or as they're about to happen, in order to A, experiment with them, B, exploit them, and C, hopefully make something new and interesting. The word make is kind of like the factory principle, where we actually make stuff. Hopefully from what you've seen, having been here for a week or so, to see that the total emphasis is on making stuff. And I think the factory ethic is quite nice in a way, because if you think about it, craftspeople or factory people, anyone who actually makes stuff, there's a slightly different work ethic to it, in the sense that you think with your hands as opposed to you thinking in an abstract kind of almost kind of philosophical sort of way, where you sit and kind of stroke your beard and hope for magic to happen. Actually, the magic happens when you start doing stuff, when you start kind of mixing things up and mixing different teams together and mixing different worlds. And I am certainly a big fan of prototyping in all its shapes and forms, anything from really simple rudimentary stuff to something that's actually quite complex. So the factory idea, it really is about if you combine the two. So the future is our emphasis on new and upcoming technologies, and the factory is looking at this kind of almost craft-based approach to making things. Because one of the interesting things about, obviously I'm an ex-planner, and insight is an important piece of what planners do. In the past, you had to wait till you get to the insight, a decent insight, and then you kind of move into an idea phase. But actually, in the kind of factory mentality and making mentality, once you start making stuff, there are insights that reveal themselves by making the thing after you started doing it or building the idea, as opposed to the other way around. So it almost comes afterwards. So as you're making something, you discover, oh well, what if I connected that thing with that thing, and that might take me to a different place, or a more interesting place than the place I started with. And this is what I mean by thinking with your hands, in the sense that as you begin to do something and experiment and exploit, new and interesting ideas and new and interesting insights will come through. Which is, part of the innovation inventor kind of world. If you look at quite a lot of cool, interesting inventions, frankly, quite a lot of them were accidents. People were trying to make something, and then they discovered something else that was even more interesting, and that became the thing that they did. I don't have any stats, but if you look at the number of startups, for example, in Silicon Valley, they start off doing something and then discover halfway through that actually it's not that thing, but the thing that they were doing underneath it is what's really interesting, and they do a pivot. So I wonder how many startups do pivots and start doing one thing and then end up doing something else.
Or realizing that their first assertions won't work.
Yeah, or actually the real value is not in what they thought it might be, but it might be in something else.
You said, I think it's interesting, you just said you're an ex-planner. Why do you think you're an ex-planner and not an evolved planner?
I suppose evolved works, but I don't see myself as somebody who does research, tries to capture insights and puts that on a brief anymore. Don't get me wrong, I still do research because it's absolutely vital and there needs to be some rigor. But I think when you get into kind of an innovation sphere or an experimental sphere, the emphasis is a lot more on the experiments and a slightly different way of working, which is you have to prototype the idea, not just think about it. You have to try different ways of getting lots and lots of different insights instead of trying to nail the one single amazing insight. Certainly when you're into the world of service design and ecosystems and stuff like that, it's actually quite an evolutionary journey. It's not the genius planner who works in a dark room and does some research and comes up with one singular insight that's amazing and then a big idea comes out of that. I think that's fine if you're trying to make a certain type of work, a communication piece. But it's not fine if you're trying to develop a smart home, you know, connected devices, things that talk to the internet, that talk to people's mobile phones, that do a number of things. You actually have to map out an entire world of complexity. And I don't think I stopped being a planner, but I think I've picked up a whole load of other skills that complement being a planner. So I don't think you can purely classify me as a planner anymore, just as in its traditional sense. But I think the skills of planning, and I think we had a discussion like that the other day, are absolutely vital, because in a world of complexity, what we're really good at, or planners, what we're really good at is that we're good at actually saying, actually, that bit and that bit and that bit are the interesting bits, and if we find an interesting pattern between them that kind of brings a new light or a new way of doing things, that's really key. Needless to say, it's the more complex things are, the more your ability to reduce and synthesize and kind of put things together in a meaningful way becomes very, very important. And the same skills that we had in the past are even more applicable now than ever. But I think one of the reasons why I said X is because I don't see my role as writing creative briefs or setting creative direction. I see my role certainly within Forge as leading Forge. My job is to create an environment where lots of interesting people, lots of interesting things can happen. I want to create an environment where talented people have the freedom to fail, but while still having plenty of room to succeed. And that's a slightly different job. So I'm almost kind of trying to manage the sandbox where people can play in a disciplined, experimental sort of way, where we can actually come up with interesting things that we can either take to clients or do ourselves.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here. I've learned a whole lot.
You're welcome.
Okay.